Gillian Anderson, who competes for a rather controversial production of Great Expectations. I don't know if you've been following the hubbub around this show. It's the great Dickens classic, of course, that was reinterpreted last year by the BBC. And Gillian Anderson plays a rather, shall we say, unconventional Miss Havisham. Let's take a look at Great Expectations. Okay, now let's bring in Gillian Anderson and our senior editor, Rob LaCuria. Thanks for joining us here today. Now, Gillian, this interpretation of Miss Havisham has been quite controversial, of course. On one hand, you can't help it. You're the youngest star ever to play this role. But you, I think, obviously made a determination as an actress not to play her like the gargoyle monster that we, that we saw in the David Lean classic, for example, right?
Well, I think anytime I take on a role, upon the first reading or two, that there has to be some kind of identification in there somewhere. Something stirs inside me about whether I feel like I have something to give or how I might see the character in my mind's eye, and the way that I ended up portraying her was kind of how she kept coming to me the whole time. And anytime I kept thinking, no, she has to be more bitter. She has to be older. I think we really didn't want to get into prosthetics. The fact is I am actually exactly the age that Dickens intended her to be. And that comes directly from Dickens's grandson. The fact is I am, playing her stuck at a younger age, and because I have a wig on that also, pulls me back, so I end up looking younger anyway. So there are those aspects to it as well. But whenever I imagined playing her more conventionally, or as people would be expecting to see her, she ended up feeling very one-dimensional and outwardly bitter and resentful, and so I kept coming back to how I heard her in my head, and that's what we ended up with.
Also, this has been done so many times. It was nice, I'm sure, to have a refreshing take on it. And, of course, the reviews, especially from the British press, were so welcoming and all of that. But it was a little startling for me to see this Miss Havisham. I think Dickens doesn't just give us a villain. If he gives us a Uriah Heep, he gives us a monstrous villain. And what's so brilliant about Miss Havisham is we've all been dumped by somebody at some point in our lives. We all think, take that to the most ridiculous possible extreme you could if you're a storyteller like Dickens. It would be a Miss Havisham. It would be somebody who would never, ever give up on that memory. She would sit in her dress, surrounded by those wedding presents, the cobwebs growing around her, and she would be pissed off. And I think the fact that this character exists at all in literature is so wonderful because, come on, Gillian, we have all felt this way, right?
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what your immediate question was about that, but I think that what I found, or what I was attempting to do, was, scenes are not going to be that interesting if the character, if she is craggly and mean and depressing in her representation the entire time. And the script, Sarah Phelps's adaptation, certainly didn't. The dialogue, the words that I was to speak did not imply or that type of behavior. And so I guess the goal in making her words and marrying her words with Dickens's words was to find a kind, and they were very poetic. They were, even for Miss Havisham, they were a bit even more poetic than in some of the dialogue where she had written some things in that what Dickens had originally had in those scenes, and so that there was felt that if the resentment and the pain were further underneath to the point where, Pitt he falls for her. He falls for the illusion and continues to want to show up and play. And if she were, he gets enough bullying at home. If that was what was outwardly being, thrown at him every time he showed up at her house, it would just, it's not as interesting.
Well, remember why she brings him to the house. She brings him to the house to break his heart so that men could feel the same way that she was, right?
Yeah.
That's her agenda.
Yeah.
I love this woman. All right, so Rob, what do you think of Miss Havisham?
Yeah, I call this iteration of Miss Havisham Hot Miss Havisham. And I was wondering that given that, there was some talk and maybe some slight controversy when Gillian was cast for this role, but you must feel really happy and just at least satisfied that everyone has really responded to it. You're starting to receive accolades and nominations for the role, and all that criticism just died away as soon as people actually got to see you in the show. So how do you feel about that?
Well, it's funny because the age aspect of it has been a big topic, obviously, from the beginning. And the irony is, I was 43 when I did the role, and the actress who played her in even David Lean's character was only 46. So there's only, there's 3 years difference there. Now, I know that they used a lot of makeup in order to make her look older and more craggly at the time. But the fact is, that she would have been exactly my age. So the controversy is around our preconceived idea of how something should be based on maybe images and sketches and snatches of stuff that has been, developed for us over the years, and not necessarily based on truth. But and I think it feels good. I mean, I love this production. I think it was beautifully shot. I think all the actors are tremendous in it, and wish that Brian Kirk, the director, had gotten more attention for it, because it's so filmic, and it's I don't read everything, so I don't know the extent to the controversy around my interpretation, but I love this project. I love the character. I worked my butt off, and it's nice that people are having a positive response to it.
I consider myself a Dickens file. I reread his books, at least 2 or 3 of them, every single year. And as a writer, I just find it a joy because his language is so rich. The scenes are so funny, even if they're gothic. Did you go back and reread the Dickens classic to set up the role?
Yeah, I did. I don't think I got through any of his novels in their entirety when I was younger, and so that was a joy to have that on the agenda, and but with a different intention in mind rather than having to write a paper about it or take that. So that, yes, I did. But that's impressive that you do that. That's really impressive. It's time consuming. I mean, they're dense, especially